beings and for kids to realise that their parents are sexual beings. It's quite scary.
Teenagers and parents talking.
The first time my mum approached me, she asked me whether I wanted her to talk to me about it, or my dad, or both of them together.
My parents never talked to me about it, never sat me down, never had to talk.
My parents were always incredibly open to me about that kind of thing. You know, when I was 6, unfortunately, they sat me down and they told me the basics, you know, the birds and the bees kind of thing.
Mine was just so, like, this is the fact, now that's it. Get out of the room, like, we're done, it's all over.
The way that you're brought up, of course, is going to impact the way you bring your children up. And the hang-ups and the embarrassments that you get when you're being taught about these sort of subjects, in as much as you can be aware of them, you try not to pass them on.
But there was no conversation about sex when I was a teenager. It just didn't happen. You didn't ask questions. You found out back at the bicycle shed.
I would have come from a fairly open, traditional Catholic upbringing, where we wouldn't have talked about sex particularly.
It's not that it wasn't discussed at home. Of course, the Late Late Show had happened at that time and people were very much aware that sex was out there somewhere.
Then you hear lots of mixed stories from your friends and that. Like, I thought that men could only have 2 children because they only had 2 testicles.
I heard that you could get pregnant off a toilet seat once.
She said that you just look through the book, pick your baby, and then they just posted it out to you, or you could go up and collect from the hospital, depend what you wanted.
I definitely think a lack of information is actually a danger to most people, because it's like this curiosity killed the cat theory, that every child, like, who doesn't understand about electricity will shove something in a plug socket and they'll just go ahead and experiment when they don't truly understand what they're doing.
Yeah, when I was around 9 and my younger brother was 7, I remember we were having a conversation about what we want to be when he grew up, and he told me he wants to be a priest. I was a bit shocked because I was like, well, why do you want to be a priest? And he said, and he was really quiet and he said it almost as if he was crying. He said it really under his breath because of sex, he said, and then looked away really, like, ashamedly. And basically what happened was whatever he had heard or whatever had been said to him, he was afraid of this sort of thing called sex, this terrifying thing, because no one had ever actually sat him down and taken away the taboo from it.
Well, my parents never really touched on the subject with me. Like, I wouldn't have been sat down and had to talk as such. It was kind of left up to ourselves.
When I was about 12, we did the sex education in school, and that would be where I learned most about it. But my parents had no input really into it. I'd rather they did, though.
Well, I think the role of sex education in the house, it should definitely be done by the parents.
She explained, first of all, that she wanted to tell me all about it because when she was young, she hadn't been told about it.
They made sure that I knew that they were approachable whenever I had a question, and they'd ask me on occasion if I had anything to ask them, but it was totally normal, totally approachable and casual, and that was a great help, you know.
Most teenagers want to hear about sex from their parents.
Both Kieran and I discussed this years ago, and we just said we would adopt a very open approach and we would cross that bridge as we came to it. When the children looked for information, we would give them what they needed to know. They didn't need to know great detail, and depending on the age as it went along, we would give them the information they needed to know.
I think if you try and be as open on every subject with them and educate them on every subject, I think that then nothing becomes a huge surprise when you do have to talk to them about sex education or whatever.
The children would have been used to having conversation with us. There was always talk. Sunday dinner or whatever. It was usually Sunday dinner when it was compulsory. Everybody sat down for dinner. There was chats in the evenings. There was communication in the house. So when it came to the question of sex, they had no problem asking questions.
I often kind of use the animals in a story to say, well, you know, there's the daddy cow and the mammy cow and the bull, and they'll have a baby and so on. But I wanted to be very clear with them that animals were doing that from instinct, whereas people had choices.
I never did actually talk to them, to my children, about sex. I don't know the reasons for that. I just know that that's the case.
I think my mum didn't bring it up because she was embarrassed, but I think she tried, but I just didn't want to hear about it. She didn't try very hard though.
The things I got in school were more clinical, I suppose, than the things I would have gotten at home. Like at home was more about the emotional responses you feel towards someone and that kind of thing, and how they can develop in a healthy relationship. Whereas in school there was diagrams and, you know, pictures.
I was a lot more comfortable with the idea that I didn't have to talk to him about it, and that there was a teacher, whoever that teacher was, who was going to be able to do all that kind of embarrassing stuff.
Teachers are just too embarrassed. Like, we even had a class for it in first year, and teachers just didn't do it. They just told us how to wash ourselves.
But of course, you can't really watch the video because you're messing and you're laughing and you're joking and everything else. So I'd say, as far as the discussion went, never happened, you know.
Nearly 4,000 teenage girls become pregnant every year.
You know, you probably do need to be sat down and it explained to you on level terms, not kind of condescending that you don't do this, you don't do that. It has to be kind of fairly open.
We'd sort of indicated to her we were going to talk to her, and she chose that she'd rather talk to me than to Joe. But she knew that Joe knew I was talking to her about it, and we went through the book and she asked questions. And she's a very communicative, chatty girl anyway, so it was quite an easy thing to do with her. And I was actually more comfortable with it than I thought I was going to be. I thought it was going to be harder.
I think we're just closer now because I'm able to understand her more. There's no barriers there, and she's able to understand me, and we can talk more openly and freely about it.
As time went on and they got older and they matured, the questions got more, we'd say, how would you put it, focused, and they wanted more detail or whatever. And when that time came, they got what they were looking for without, again, giving them too much information.
Ever since my mum and myself have had a good relationship, because she was really open with me, I feel like I can trust her.
My father didn't take part in the discussion at all because he felt that, you know, because he was a man, he couldn't talk to me about it because I was a girl.
I was reasonably confident that they were covering that relationships and sexuality education material, and that he would have learned enough from that. Now, to a certain extent, that's a bit of a cop-out, obviously.
My dad, the way he teaches is through intimate kind of storytelling and that kind of thing. He'll always relate it back to himself. That's just the way he tells any story. So I find it quite good that he would also tell me stories about when he was younger, when he was growing up.
If you have that kind of relationship with your dad, you'll be able to read guys better when it comes to talking to guys and your boyfriends about that kind of thing. I think the communication will be